Picture the moment. A tiny palace chamber, lit only by the flicker of an oil lamp. The air is thick and still. In a silk-lined cradle lies a newborn princess, her face pale, her lips blue. No sound escapes her mouth, no breath rises from her chest. Standing over her is the empress herself, Zetian, her gaze cold, her hands folded neatly in front of her. There are no tears, no wailing, only a silence so heavy it seems to bend the walls inward. Servants tremble at the edges of the room, not daring to move. Somewhere beyond the door, the night wind carries the distant cry of another child, still alive, for now. This was no ordinary tragedy. This was the beginning of something far darker, a rise to power that would be written in betrayal, manipulation, and the kind of cruelty that leaves even historians whispering her name. Zetian would become the first and only woman to rule China as emperor, and perhaps its most feared. Before we go deeper into her story, tell me, where in the world are you watching from right now? Your answer will travel across centuries as we step back into a time when life and death in the palace were decided by a single glance or a single hand around a child's neck. Zetian was born Wu Jiao in 624 AD during the Great Tang Dynasty. Unlike most girls of her age, she was not raised to be meek or silent. Her wealthy family gave her something far more dangerous, an education. She could read, write, and speak with confidence. She learned to charm, to persuade, and to use words as weapons. By the time she reached her teenage years, she already understood one simple truth. In the palace, beauty could open doors, but intelligence could kick them down. At just 13 years old, Wu was sent to the imperial court as a concubine for Emperor Taizong. She was just one among many, a single pearl in a bowl of jewels. Taizong barely noticed her, but she noticed everything. His moods, his politics, the rivalries between women, and the subtle ways influence shifted from one hand to another. She learned that power was not given. It was taken piece by piece, with a smile on your face and a knife hidden in your sleeve. When Emperor Taizong died in 649 AD, all childless concubines were sent to live out the rest of their days in Buddhist temples. Wu, still only 25, shaved her head, donned a monk's robe and vanished behind temple walls. To the world, she was gone. But inside her, ambition burned like a hidden flame. She knew the palace had not seen the last of her, because she still had one powerful connection, a prince who could not forget her face. That prince was Gaozong, Taizong's son and successor. During her years as a concubine, Zetian had caught his attention, youthful, intelligent, and unafraid to meet his gaze. Now that Gaozong was emperor, he often visited the temple where she lived. These visits were discreet, hidden beneath the shadow of piety, but each conversation they shared stitched a thread between them, one that would pull her back into the palace. Normally, no concubine from a previous emperor could ever return to court, especially one who had been sent to a temple. But Gaozong broke the rule. Against tradition, against whispers of scandal, he summoned Zetian back. It was a decision that would change the empire forever. Her reappearance shocked the court. She was no longer the shy teenager who once bowed at Taizong's feet. She returned with a sharpened confidence, an understanding of palace games, and a dangerous knowledge of its players. Gaozong's wife, Empress Wang, initially welcomed her, believing that Wu could be an ally against other concubines, but Zetian had no intention of being anyone's ally. She quickly became Gaozong's favorite. Her intelligence made her stand out, her beauty made her unforgettable, and her ambition made her unstoppable. Within months, she bore him a daughter. For most women, a royal child meant security. But for Zetian, it became the centerpiece of a deadly plot. Empress Wang, though childless herself, often visited the baby. She would hold the child, smile at her, even bring small gifts. But to Zetian, these visits were not kindness, they were opportunities. In her mind, the empress was already a threat, and in the palace threats were eliminated before they could grow teeth. One afternoon, Zetian left her infant alone in the cradle. Moments later, she returned with the child lifeless in her arms, screaming in grief. Servants came running, Guards followed. She wailed that the Empress must have done it, that Wang had been the last person seen near the child. The accusation was explosive. Gaozong, already swayed by Wu's charms, was horrified. If his wife had killed his child, she could no longer be empress. But here is the truth, historians whisper. Many believe Wu Zetian herself killed her own daughter, not out of madness, but out of calculation. By destroying her own flesh and blood, she created a crime so vile that only one punishment could follow: the removal of Empress Wang. The court was thrown into chaos. Ministers argued behind closed doors, palace corridors buzzed with rumor, and yet the emperor remained silent, his eyes fixed only on Wu Zetian. She did not plead with him. She did not beg for justice. She simply wept in public and smiled in private. Empress Wang denied the accusations with desperation. She had never harmed the child, she said. She had only shown kindness, but Gaozong's mind was already poisoned. Wu Zetian had planted the seed, and it had grown into a forest of suspicion. The trial was not a trial at all. Wang's allies were silenced, her servants taken away, her every word twisted against her. In the end, the emperor stripped her of her title. She was dragged from the throne room, her hair undone, her robes torn. Wu Zetian watched it all, her expression unreadable, but Wu was not content with mere removal. The empress still lived, and as long as she lived, she could still be a symbol for rebellion. Months later, Wu Zetian struck again, this time with the full cruelty she was becoming known for. Empress Wang and another rival, consort Xiao, were imprisoned together. Their food was reduced to scraps, their beds to cold stone. And then came the final order, one so brutal it would stain Wu Zetian's name for centuries. The women's limbs were hacked off, their bodies thrown into wine jars, and they were left to die in agony. It was said their screams echoed through the palace for hours before the silence came. The path was now clear. With both rivals dead, Wu Zetian was crowned empress. She stood beside Gaozong as his equal in ceremony, though in truth she was already beginning to control him. And the empire would learn that there is nothing more dangerous than a ruler who believes every life, even her own child's, is expendable. Wu Zetian's rise did not stop with her coronation. She quickly became the power behind the throne. Gaozong, plagued by ill health and headaches, relied on her for decisions. Ministers reported directly to her. Petitions were addressed in her name. Slowly, the emperor's shadow grew smaller, and hers grew longer. But power in the Tang court was never safe. Every minister, every general, every royal relative could become a threat. Wu Zetian understood this. She began to build her own network, loyal officials, spies, and informants. She rewarded obedience with wealth and punished doubt with ruin. Her enemies met quiet ends. Some were executed for treason after trials built on lies. Others simply vanished, their bodies never found. She used the imperial secret police not only to protect the state, but to protect herself. The palace became a place where even the highest-ranking men lowered their voices and watched their backs. Outside the palace, Wu Zetian cultivated an image of benevolence, reducing taxes, promoting talented officials from lower classes, and supporting Buddhism. But inside, her rule was soaked in fear. Her own children were not spared from her suspicion. Two of her sons, dissatisfied with her control, were accused of plotting against her. Both were removed from succession, one dying mysteriously, the other sent into exile. In the Tang dynasty, family bonds were nothing compared to the bonds of power. As Gaozong's health worsened, Wu Zetian began preparing for the day she would rule openly. She studied statecraft, foreign diplomacy, military strategy. Ministers whispered that the empress was more capable than the emperor himself. They were right, and soon she would prove it. When Emperor Gaozong died in 683 AD, their son Zhongzong took the throne. But his reign lasted only weeks. Wu Zetian declared him unfit, accusing him of being under the influence of his wife. He was deposed, replaced by his younger brother Ruizong, a boy emperor who was, in truth, nothing more than his mother's puppet. Now Wu Zetian ruled in all but name. She issued decrees, commanded armies, and reshaped the court. For years, she waited for the right moment to make the final move. That moment came in 690 AD, when she forced Ruizong to step aside and declared herself emperor of a new dynasty, the Zhou. She was the first woman in Chinese history to claim the title of emperor in her own right. Her portraits showed her as a serene, motherly figure, but in the halls of power she was a lion among sheep. Under her rule, China expanded its influence, trade flourished, and the arts thrived. But the cost was blood, rivers of it. Every whisper of dissent was crushed. Torture chambers worked day and night. Men and women of noble birth found themselves stripped, beaten, and exiled for the slightest hint of disloyalty. And yet, for all her victories, Zetian's empire was built on fear. Those who lived in her court spoke in half-sentences, glanced over their shoulders, and bowed more deeply than necessary. Ministers who had once praised her began plotting against her. Old age crept in. Her body weakened, but her mind remained sharp. She could see the vultures circling, waiting for her to falter. And perhaps in those last years, she realized the truth. Power had given her everything, but it had also left her utterly alone. The infant whose death had sealed her rise was long forgotten by the world, but not by her enemies. In whispered tales and hidden scrolls, they told the story of the empress who had killed her own child to claim a throne. When Zetian finally died in 705 AD, the Tang dynasty was restored. Her name was carved in stone, her deeds recorded in history. But among the people, her legacy was not that of a motherly ruler. It was of a woman who turned the palace into a place of ghosts, whose hands, though wrapped in silk, were always red. Because in the end, the price of her power had been everything she touched.